So we are starting tonight in Job chapter 9, verse 14 through 35, and we'll just see how far along we can go. Thank you for being with me or hanging in there with me the time that I was sick during the flu, and we will overcome this. We will overcome this together. Before we begin, let's pray. We're grateful, Father, for every word that you give us in your word. We pray that we may understand every word, that we may understand what the lessons are trying to get across to us. As we look through Job, Lord, we see a man who tried to the very best of his ability to live the life that he needed to live, and yet trouble came. And he struggles with this. And we a lot of times struggle with this. How can the righteous suffer? And how can the wicked seemingly get away with everything? But we know, Lord, that you don't look at things the way we do. Father, help us to be faithful and keep our faith and trust in you. And to know that no matter what, you're going to work everything out according to your will. And Father, I fervently pray that we will be in that will, even though, like Job and his friends, even though we don't understand. Help us, Father, to trust. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right. So as I said, earlier in this passage, we go back, and I'm just kind of giving you a quick thing. Job starts talking about the doctrine of God's justice. The idea is, the proof of God's justice. Then we started talking about the idea of the application of God's justice, chapter 9, verse 14 through 35. Here we find that Job is condemning himself. Notice what he says. How then can I answer him and choose my words to reason with him? Though I were righteous, I could not answer him. I would beg mercy of my judge. So Job is saying, I know that I'm not right in and of myself. I know that I can't really give an answer to God. I know that I'm not perfect. I know that I am not a saint as it was. And he says, I know that there are some things that I have done that are wrong. And we will, as we continue to look through Job's speeches, we will see him saying that he has done things wrong, but he cannot grasp or nor understand why he's having to go through such horrible situations for no more than he's done. If you go back and remind yourself of Job chapter 1 and 2, we remember that God himself says that Job was blameless. So why is it that Job is going through these horrible things when he's not been or not done anything as far as he's concerned? He's not gone out and killed anybody, not been unfaithful to his wife, not done so many of these other things. How can God judge him and punish him to the extent that he's having to suffer? And so he realizes that he can't argue with God about what's going on. He says, beginning there, he had talked about the idea, how then can I answer him and choose my words to reason with him? So Job is saying, in essence, if the Lord is the Lord of heaven and earth, if he rules the suns and the stars and everything like that, if he treads down the sea, if you cannot resist him, if he has power against you, then how in the world shall I dare answer him? How can I answer him anything? How can I choose any kind of words that would prove to God that what he's doing is wrong?
You think the saying like, okay, so an innocent person doesn't suffer the wicked or whatever, something like that, then like Paul, like talking about, I've been shipwrecked, and I got stripes. I got the stripes, right. And then I don't know. I've had all these issues, and it was Satan,
right?
It was Satan who was trying to hinder righteousness.
That's exactly right, and that's where the key comes in. But as they're looking at it, it's God and what they're going through. And again, Job can't wrap his mind around being punished as harshly as he's being punished for a small lie or something like that. He can't grasp that, if that's what he had done.
This is a New Testament thing, right?
In a lot of it is.
Because Jesus says that we're going to suffer.
Right. But it's not just the Old Testament. Job was suffering. The New Testament is emphasizing the same idea of that we are going to have to suffer. So the thing is that it's hard for him here in verse 14. He says, I can't answer him. I can't choose my words to reason with him. He said, though I were righteous, I could not answer him. If I were so righteous that none of this would have been going on, he said, in essence, why, if that's the case, I can't even declare my own righteousness.
What does it mean by answer him?
Do what now?
Answer him for what?
For if I could not answer him, if he was to give me an explanation, then how could I answer God? You know, that's in essence what he's saying. Though I were righteous, I could not answer him. All I would be doing is begging mercy of my judge. But this again is where the biggest struggle he is having is taking place. Why am I going through all of this when I know that I have not done anything to deserve this? But even if I was to talk to God and complain, then I really don't have a right to do anything but to beg mercy from him.
I don't have a leg to stand on.
I don't have a leg to stand on because I'm a human. I'm the creature. He's the creator. So we pick up again, chapter 9 at verse 14. And he said, I would just beg mercy of my judge. Verse 16, he says, if I had called and he answered me, I would not believe that he was listening to my voice, for he crushes me with a tempest and multiplies my wounds without cause.
What's a tempest?
The tempest is like a storm, a major storm. And that's the way he's looking at it. My life has just been turned upside down. A tornado has come through here. It has turned everything upside down. Yeah. Nothing is going the way it needs to right now. So he says, you know, if I had called God to controversy, and if he had allowed me to speak my case, I don't believe that he would have condescended to hear my case and attribute any good to it. He said, if I called upon God in prayer and he granted my desires, he said, I can't believe anything that my prayer has to do with it. So you see, the thing that I like about verse 14, 15, 16 is emphasizing here, this is added to his attitude is, you know, this is how he's looking at himself. Okay, I'm the creature, he's the creator. Though I cannot understand why I'm going through these things, I can't at the same time call God on the carpet. God is so much higher than me. God is so much greater than I am. And while I can't understand God's allowing me to go through this, at the same time, I really have nothing to argue toward my point.
That's what I feel like. I don't feel like I could say anything to God.
Yeah. And that's exactly what Job is saying here in this situation. But then he says, verse 17, he crushes me with a tempest, a storm. The idea is Job is looking at this. Job is looking at this a lot like his friends. God punishes evildoers.
Well, you think he's making assumptions in silence?
In a lot of those,
yeah. Making assumptions based on silence.
Well, it's based on God's silence, yes, but also based on the fact that this is what most everybody believed.
Yeah.
And so he's sitting there struggling with trying to figure out, I'm going through all of this.
He's going so far as to saying like he's doing this.
That's right. And you see, this is where Job gets in very treacherous ground because he makes, like you said, assumptions and accusations.
Don't you feel like that though? If you go I'm not going to curse God out. I'm not going to do something crazy like that. Right. But you should feel like that if you're going in there, like even if your prayers are, you're frustrated, you're praying, and you should feel that there's a line there. Like I don't want to cross this line.
That's right. But again, where's the line?
I'm saying for us in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's it. Where's the line? And you know what would be interesting about that would be if you talk to 4 or 5 different people about where that line would be, 4 or 5 different answers.
Well, you know, my dad, I don't think he knows the Bible. Whatever else. My family members, a lot of them didn't, but like there's some things that they've said that when I was growing up or as I was becoming a Christian. And one of the things that my dad told me that is so true though is you got to talk to God from your heart. Right. You got to genuinely honestly, this fake. Yeah. That's not the time to like do some kind of act.
That's right.
When you're praying, that's when you're supposed to convey your heart and your soul, what's on your mind.
Right.
You know.
Another thing that big pointed out in his verses, he said, if I called and he answered me, I would not believe he was listening to my voice, is because there was also the idea, and we even see this in the New Testament, There's the idea that God does not hear the prayers of sinners.
Yeah.
And so Job is just really struggling with all of this and trying to understand, God is so great. God is taking care of all of these things. He really doesn't have the time to listen to me. But at the same time, I believe in him. I believe he's going to do what's right. Even though he's breaking me with this storm, I really can't expect him to hear my calls. But I don't understand why God is allowing me to go through all of this.
Where's that verse you're quoting?
Well,
that doesn't hear the prayers of sinners. I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
I'll have to look it up. I can't remember right off the top of my head.
It's John 9:31.
John 9:31. Thank you, brother. John 9:31. But again, in every one of these contexts, this is the reason why I've had a lot of problems. I've shared this with you before about verses and chapters in the Bible, and the fact that sometimes it breaks thoughts. And we need to read like we would read paragraphs. We would read read any other book in that respect, because that's the way he's going to do it. So he says, you multiply my wounds without cause. Verse 17, the idea is and in a sense, verse 17 is also a charge against God's justice. God, I didn't deserve this. You're sovereign. You could do what you wish. You have the right to, because you created me, but I've not done anything to be put through all of this stuff. And that's the way he's looking at it. And I think it's here that Job begins to, because of his frustration, because his friends aren't doing anything but condemning him. It's kind of like he's beginning to get frustrated and winds up saying some things that he will repent of later. Okay? And I think that's where, again, a great lesson there. God can handle that. I don't want to get too far as to sit there in judgment on God like I can. At the same time, I do not understand. And I think that's part of the reason why God gave us the book of Job. There's some things we will never understand this side of eternity, and maybe even on the other side of eternity. But God is God. And that's what's important. So that's, I think, what he's trying to do there. He begins to question God's justice in this. Now, notice what it goes on and says, verse 18, chapter 9, verse 18, he will not allow me to catch my breath, but fills me with bitterness. He says, I can't take a breath. There's no breathing space. I'm just so overwhelmed that I can't breathe. And that's frustrating. And then he says, it fills me with bitterness. All of this in verse 18 reflects upon God's justice. It reflects upon God's goodness and God's mercy. So you see, he's going a little bit further. He's reflecting on God's goodness and mercy. So he says, verse 19, if it is a matter of strength, yes, he's strong. If he's just trying to prove that he has the right to do this, then yeah, I believe that. I believe
he's strong. Try not to get frustrated in those situations, though, right? I'm saying for us, as a lesson for us, if we're under fire,
right,
we got to try not to get angry
and frustrated and start charging God with things,
or just in general.
Yeah, and that's hard to do, is it not?
Yeah,
because our emotions run past our thinking, and as a result, we wind up saying things that we shouldn't.
Or doing something,
yeah. And that's exactly what begins to happen. So he says, if it's a matter of strength, he's strong. It's of justice, who will appoint my day in court. The ideal is, how can I contend with God? Obviously he can't. If I try to take him to court, think about that for a moment. Let's take God to court. God, you don't have the right to do this. Let's sue him for doing this to me. No, you can't do that either. I don't have the right to, who's going to set me a time to plead? We all watch these.
Was it God going to preside over his own case?
Yeah, that's kind of what it boils down to. Is there a conflict of interest there?
He's going to represent himself.
And in a sense, that's what he does, right? But that's the point. And he has the right because he's God.
I was just thinking about the one where he says, well, it would be accounted debt. That's that one verse that people misinterpret.
Mm-hmm.
And what it really means is that God made a promise and he keep it.
Right.
It doesn't mean that God owes you anything. It
That's
just
right.
means that God made a promise and keep it.
That's right. He goes on in verse 20. He says, if I brought him to court, he says, if the matter of strength, he's strong, and it's of justice, who will appoint my day in court? Who's going to who's going to be the judge that's going to judge God? He said, though I were righteous, my own mouth would condemn me.
They know what judges are, apparently.
Yeah, they did. They knew that at that time. They knew exactly.
Well, I mean, as far as what time they're going to
do. Right. So he says, I can't take him to court. I could not stand a trial, because if I plead that I'm righteous, he says, my own mouth would then be used against me. And that's what we've already begun to see with his friends. His friends have already said, you've gone too far, Job.
Do we know how much time has passed?
No, we really don't.
I mean, I'm just wondering that, because there's like, it seems like I just feel like that's kind of a gray area.
It is a very gray area. We don't know how long all this.
Because I don't know if this has been like it just happened in this one day, or if this is.
No, like I think it's going to be longer than that.
And months or years.
Well, I don't know that it would go so far as a year, but I could see this discussion happening within a 2 or 3 or 4 month time frame.
Yeah,
that's my thinking. I have no proof for that whatsoever, as they're trying to wrestle with this
because that
problem.
could have something to do with how he's reacting to stuff too.
Right.
Because I mean, the longer he's in that,
the harder
and
the worse he feels.
Yeah.
The
longer he's got, especially with the boils on his skin.
Right. And the fevers. And again, think about it in that respect. When you've got fever, sometimes you wind up saying things you don't say. You lash out whenever you don't mean to. So as we continue to look,
it'll probably affect your mind anyway.
Yeah.
Probably in general.
Yeah. So I think all of that comes into play. But again, we don't have a definite or a definitive time frame whenever all that took place, or how long it took. So he said, even if I pleaded for my own self, even if I was my own attorney, he says he would prove me perverse. Though I were blameless, it would prove me perverse, is what he's trying to say there. So he goes on to verse 21. He says, and earlier he had said, at least hypothetically, he could have sinned, chapter 7, verse 20. And so he's going to say, I'm blameless. I do not know myself. I despise my life. Verse 21. So he said, even though I was perfect, I would despise my life because I really don't know myself. Now, again, think about us a lot of times. We know what we do, and we know when we do something wrong. Sometimes when we get pushed, we wind up doing things that we would normally never have done under any other circumstance.
You talking about with people, or are you talking about
with people, with situations, with a lot? Sometimes whenever you're feeling very horrible, you wind up saying things, doing things that you shouldn't say or do.
Well, especially when it involves like someone wrong, doing you wrong.
That's exactly right. And that's
a person.
And that's how Job feels God is doing in this whole situation. So he says, even if I could be righteous myself, I would despise my life thinking that I could even try to contend with God. And that's what he's saying. He says, verse 21, I despise my life. I'm blameless. I do not know myself. I despise my life. So he says, he maintains the point. You can't judge. And this is what he does in verse 22 through 24. You can't judge a man solely by outward conditions. Now, the Bible does say in another passage, as a man thinks in his heart, but so is he. So you can judge a man thoughts in one sense by looking at the actions that he takes under certain circumstances.
Yeah.
But we really, in another sense, can't do that because we don't know all that man has been through. We don't know all the struggles that man has struggled with. He might make a totally different decision than I would, because I may have tried to live a Christian life, and I would try to think of things more biblically than somebody out there in the world who's never even given that a try.
But we don't know where a person's at with repentance. So.
We don't know where they are with repentance. We don't know where they are.
It could be a mistake that someone made. It could be you maybe just be judging someone had a bad day and they just did something maybe they don't normally do, or
So here's the point that he goes on and makes. And it seems like that as you begin reading in verse 22, you can't judge a man by outward conditions. Let's see what he says in 22 through 24. Therefore, I say he destroys the blameless and the wicked. If he scourge slays suddenly, he laughs at the plight of the innocent. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covers his face of its judges. If it is not he, who else could it be? So some people think that Job is not talking so much about God's way of thinking, but whenever he starts saying in verse 22 through 24, that he's actually talking about the judgment call that his friends are making and other people would make under the same circumstances. It sounds like it's talking about God. It does kind of sound like that. If I say, in essence, he destroys the blameless and the wicked, if the scourge slays suddenly, he laughs at the plight of the innocent. So he says, as I'm looking at it, he said, I look at it from the viewpoint that God would punish the wicked, but I don't grasp the point laughing at the plight of the innocent.
It sounds like someone who's saying, well, why does God allow bad things to happen?
That's exactly right.
Like, why does kids get cancer or something like that?
Yeah, that's exactly the point. And again, this is where we struggle with. Here again, he's coming very close to irreverence. There's nothing in the book that is as harsh than what he's saying here in verses 22 through 24. So he's reflecting on the justice of God by making such a statement. And what is that saying also? I have the right to judge God's justice. Who as human beings has the right to judge God's justice? Nobody. Nobody does. So we have to look at it. So he says, verse 24, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covers the face of its judges. If it's not God, then who? He says, most of the rulers of the earth are wicked men. They oppress, they persecute the righteous. So the friend's idea that only the righteous prosper and the wicked suffer is erroneous. Wicked people punish righteous men.
Yeah.
And do things to righteous men they should not do. And so, the bottom line is what he's trying to say here is when he said he covers the face of its judges, he's saying is perhaps in a sense that God is covering the face of the judges to make a determination of what's right and wrong. Or he could be saying he's covering the face of the good judges who can tell the difference between right and wrong. You see, when we get into this is where we struggle with a lot of this poetic language. What is he really trying to say here? If this is the way it is in human society, then human society came about because God made human society. And so ultimately, God is the author of human society. God is the author of what's right and what's wrong. God is also the author of the one, of those who are supposedly sitting in judgment.
That's a borderline Calvinist right there.
Yeah.
Like this whole thing, like God ordains evil. Or
That's exactly where I think, again, Job has messed up. Because, again, he did not ordain evil. He allowed it, but he did not ordain it.
Yeah.
Right? Go back to Genesis chapters 1 and 2. So, 25 through 35, he says he's now complaining of the greatness of his troubles. And I am, by the way, I am trying to speed up a little bit more now because of so much more area we've got to cover. So just hang in there with me. Let's read verse 25 through 35. Now my days are swifter than a runner. They flee away, they see no good. They pass by like swift ships, like an eagle swooping down on its prey. If I say I'll forget my complaint, I'll put off my sad face and wear a smile, I'm afraid of all my sufferings. I know that you will not hold me innocent. If I'm condemned, why then do I labor in vain? And I washed myself with snow water and cleansed my hands with soap, yet you plunged me into the pit. My own clothes would abhor me. Again, still speaking about God in verse 32, he's not a man as I, that I may answer him, that we should go to court together. nor is there any mediator between us who may lay his hand on us both. Let him take his rod away from me, and do not let dread of him terrify me. For I would speak and not fear him, but it is not so with me. So Job is saying, as I'm living my life now, and I think what he's doing here in this particular passage here is talking about the ideal of all his good days are gone. He has nothing else to look forward to. As far as he's concerned, this is it.
Like he's old or something?
He's old. Well, let's also think about it in this respect. Think about what he's gone through. Loss of his children, loss of his property, loss of his wealth, loss of his health.
Yeah.
Especially whenever you are sick, you strive not to. You try to continue to have a good, positive image, but sometimes sickness just wears you down.
Yeah.
It just wears you down to the point, pain wears you down to the point where you can't think or can't see anything good.
Well, I guess if you don't get better.
Yeah. And you just feel like you are running down, and that's what's going on here.
I couldn't imagine what it'd be like for someone that's like in the hospital and they might not know whether they're going to die or.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's probably the same kind of thing here.
And
we often think that they're very ignorant, and I think that people don't really understand.
No,
they were not ignorant. They were really smart about a lot.
They were smart about the people here that day, just as we are today. Mm-hmm. You go into people or into hospital rooms where they're struggling and with difficulty, and I
mean, I guarantee they saw people die.
Yeah,
like I guarantee that Job has seen people die from illness.
That's right.
That everyone's seen somebody back then.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
We try to hide it, but I saw my father pass. Mm-hmm. There's just so many other.
Both my grandmas had cancer like 5 times.
And the thing is, I've been in hospital rooms where you could pretty well tell that they knew that their time was up. And
it's scary though to have cancer or something like that, and it's life-threatening, and then to still have faith through all that. And I give them credit for that though. Mm-hmm. They still had faith, and they still came through it on the other side.
Yeah, yeah. So again, he says, "My days are swifter than a runner. They run like swift ships." But also, whenever you're sick, it seems like hours drag out.
He's saying that when you're getting old and then your days are going by faster.
Yeah, they are.
What he's saying is that you look up and you're old.
Mm-hmm. And that's, for those of us that are older, we understand that. We grasp that. Huh?
I'm getting old.
Well, we all, every day we live, we're getting older. I never thought I did think about it, but I didn't think about it. I never dreamed that I'd be 61, but here I am.
I'm almost 40.
Yeah, 40. I was sitting there thinking years ago, 40 was
I had
old.
gray hair in my 20s, though. Yeah. I was old before I was old.
Right. Notice he says, "My days are swift. They pass like swift ships, like an eagle swooping on its prey." So here he is again, all these metaphors concerning the swiftness of his life. So he says, if I forget my complaint, I'll leave off my heaviness. He's trying to do what his friends suggested, put aside that load of sorrow by not thinking about it, but you can't. You can't. The whole mess of suffering, the loss of his children, the loss of his wealth, the loss of his health, all of that, all of this stuff keeps rising up against him. And you can't forget. You can't forget. Again, most of you know that I lost a son January 1st of last year. And there's not a day goes by since then. You can't forget that. You just can't forget that.
Yeah.
You cope with it. You do the best you can with it. But there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about it.
I feel like that all alone.
And so if it's your parents, you expect it. If it's your grandparents, you expect it. If it's someone younger than you, you don't expect it.
Yeah.
And the thing is there's not a day goes by that I don't think about it. So here's the whole point he tries to make. He says, I would love to just lay all this stuff down. And he says, I would just, I'll put off my sad face and wear a smile. And then, think about this for a moment. Isn't that what we try to sometimes encourage people to do? Well, just put on a happy face, things will get better. And that's not really helping the people that's going through that. Just telling people to feel better doesn't mean that they're going to start feeling better.
I think you got to have something going on.
Yeah.
If you've got something going on, you can focus in and lock in on your target.
And it helps.
Sometimes you just got to work.
Right. Work or something like
something to get through those moments.
To get through those moments. That's
and then
exactly
once you get through it, it gets easier as it goes along a little bit. It doesn't go away necessarily.
That's right.
It gets easier.
Yeah.
A little bit easier.
And that's part of the reason why I wanted to go back through Job for myself. Because Job is wrestling with, I have a better understanding. I've not lost 10 children, but I've lost one. And I could just imagine his feelings in this situation. So what is he saying? He says, I'll forget my complaint. I'll put off my sad face. But then he says, I'm afraid of all my sufferings. He says, all afraid of all my sorrows. I don't know that thou wilt hold me innocent. He tries to recover, but he says, you know what? I'm still going to suffer. I'm still going to suffer. To top it all off, notice what he says in the last part of it. I know that he will not hold me innocent. I know that you will not hold me innocent. So he's still thinking, like his friends, that he's in this situation because he's done something wrong. Mm-hmm. I know, Lord, even though I try not to think about these things and all, I know that you're not going to hold me innocent because I know that I'm not.
What do you think? We should look at it like that? I don't think we should look at it like we did something wrong necessarily.
I don't think so either.
Self-evaluation.
Yeah.
I think examine yourself to see whether you are in the faith.
Right.
Is it Jesus Christ that's in you, or unless you are disqualified?
Right.
Then
that's the key. But again, sometimes we can't just do that.
Sometimes just going through stuff and it has nothing to do with it.
That's right.
It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
The righteous are persecuted.
And the righteous get sick. And the righteous get cancer. And the righteous get heart problems. And the righteous get, and you just go on and on and on.
Some of that's our doing.
Some of it is, but
some of it, is our doing is in individually or our doing as a group.
Yeah. I think in both situations. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
Brother?
Yes.
I think one of the things we need to remember too is that we live in an imperfect world.
Right.
Yeah.
And we are just as susceptible to all of the issues of life as anybody else. Doesn't matter if we're righteous or not. It's just the fact of life.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
We're going to go through things.
We are going to go through things. But you know as well as I do, I think all of us have realized this, that there's always somebody out there somewhere that whenever you get sick, what have you done wrong? You get cancer. Well, you must have done something bad for God to give that to you. You've got heart problems. Well, you just need to get your heart straightened out with God, right? And that's not always the case. Another real reality of life that we don't like to talk about, but it's the fact we're all going to die.
We see in Revelations that will wipe away every tear.
That's right. And we all are all going to die.
There's not going to be any pain
or anything else up there. That's right.
Brother, I know you need to move on, but I think it comes across too. If there's a natural disaster somewhere,
right,
then we say, well, those people must have been wicked, or they must have been because they're ungodly because they're not Christians. Yeah, so we have the same kind of a thing again.
Yeah.
Remember they said that to Jesus, and they said that tower fell on people. Yeah. And he said, do you think that those people were any more wicked than you?
That's right. And then we think about the whole Russia-Ukraine situation right now.
Oh, no.
And you see, we're going to sit down and go down there on that road and say, well, obviously the Ukrainians did something wrong, or the Russians did something wrong. Somebody somewhere has done something wrong. Well, you know what I'm trying to say? And we can sit there and take sides on the situation, but it does point out exactly what you're saying, Brother Eddie, in the fact that, or Godfrey, the fact that we're living in an imperfect world. And no matter how hard we try, we can't really imagine what the perfect world is going to be like. Though I want to get there to see it, you know, and live there. That's what it's about. Job goes on and he says, you know, if I'm condemned, he said, if I'm condemned, why am I even trying to continue to go on through this? You know, why bother? Go ahead and take me out. You know, if I am just as accounted as you're saying I am, then I'm receiving my just deserts. So why argue? Why seek to justify myself if there's no way of forthcoming for vindication? So God, you know, if I wash myself with water, he said, with snow water, cleanse my hands with soap. You will plunge me into the pit. Who is the you? God. And he's saying, you know, I can wash myself in the purest water, remove all the guilt. I have spotless innocence. What shall I gain?
You see, like when you say that too, that's another thing. Like you're talking about, go ahead and kill me. And I think about that one and Amos or whatever, that one where he says, what's this day to you? Mm-hmm. This day is going to be darkness and judgment. Mm-hmm. Like, why are you wishing for the coming day of the Lord?
Right. Right. And that's something else. So, you know, he says, you know, my own clothes will abhor me. So he says, verse 32, and we're getting to the end of this part of it. He says, he's not a man like I am. And I appreciate Job saying that, because how often do we as human beings try to bring God down to our level?
But he did come down.
He did come to our down.
And he did be a man too.
That's right. That's right. But what Job is saying in this situation, he's not here in front of me where I can answer him. There's not a man here standing here in front of me where I could take him to court.
It's like Jacob, right?
You know,
Jacob wrestled with God.
Jacob wrestled with God. So again, you know, God's not a man. I can't call him to court. And again, his thoughts are not my thoughts. I can't call him to account. And I'm grateful for these kind of words, because it reminds us that we're not God. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
That would be a tough spot to be in. Big shoes to fill.
Yeah. But of course, we never could be God in the fact that he knows what to do under every circumstance anyway. We're not. We can't. So I think that's what he's trying to say. He said, he's not a man as I am, that I may answer him, that we should go to court together. There's not a mediator between us. Now, interestingly enough, like you brought out, Jesus did come to be the mediator between God and man. And isn't it interesting that he sent his own son, God did, to be that mediator? Yeah, that's right. He said, there's not a mediator between us who may lay his hand on both of us, and, you know, and take us to court. That's in essence what he's saying. So what is his point that he's trying to make here? He's saying, you know, there's no authority to call God to account. So let God take his rod away from me, the rod of suffering, the things that he's going through. Let not my dread of him terrify me. Again, look at the beautiful, powerful words and thoughts he has about God. He says, I dread him. I know that he is all powerful, all knowing, all everything. He says, there is a sense that I'm terrified of him. But he says, then I would speak and not fear, but it is not so with me. So he says, in essence, I'm weighed down with these fears and sufferings. I can't plead. So he goes on in chapter 10. He goes on in chapter 10, verses 1 through 7. My soul loathes my life. I'll give free course to my complaint. I will speak in the bitterness of my soul. I'll say to God, do not condemn me. Show me why you contend with me. Does it not, or does it seem good to you that you should oppress, that you should despise the work of your hands, smile on the counsel of the wicked? Do you have eyes of flesh? Do you see as man sees? Are your days like the days of a mortal man, and your years like the days of a mighty man, that you should seek for my iniquity and search out my sin? Although you know that I am not wicked, and there is no one who can deliver from your hand. So he's saying here in he's talking about verses 1 through 7, it's hardship that he's under. He knows it. He said, God, you know it too. And he says, is there not anyone who's going to deliver me from your hand? So that's the point. That's kind of the sum. This is verses 1 through 7 is kind of the keynote of everything. My soul is weary of life. He's withheld some of the grief and anguish in. Now he's just going to give full vent to his feelings. That's the way he is about this whole thing. He says, we're in chapter 10, verses 1 through 7, this first point. Job is saying, my soul loathes my life. He said, I'm going to forgive free course. I'm tired of holding it in. Even though he supposes that the reason why he's going through this is due to some sin in his life, he will be glad to bear the burden instead of blaming God. I'm not going to blame God. I will say to God, do not condemn me. Show me whereof you contend with me. Now, Job's friends have contended with him. And here he makes an appeal to God. God, please don't condemn me. Don't cast me off. Don't shuffle me off. Be merciful to me.
If he's a believer, right?
Uh-huh.
A believer can't go to not believing, right? Like, in other words, he knows God, right? So he can't exactly go and be like, okay, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to know God. I'm not going to talk to God. Like, that's what I'm trying to say is, like, they can't undo that.
You can't undo that, especially in Job's case, because he's had a relationship with God.
That's what I mean. Like, you can't undo that, right?
You can't undo that. He's always going to know that because he has had that relationship with God. And so that says a lot about that as well. So he says, do not condemn me. Now the friends have condemned him. And he's saying in here, he says, why, Lord, why is it? Verse 2, show me why you contend with me. Don't condemn me. Just tell me what I've done wrong. He cannot think of any major sin that has caused this kind of suffering. He, in essence, is asked why. He, in essence, show me why you contend with me, right? Why? There's the question. And there's the question we all ask, isn't it?
What did he say about him again? He said there's no one more righteous.
Right, he did say that. There's no one more righteous than you.
No, I'm saying did God say that about Job?
God did say he was a righteous man and blameless in all his ways in Job 1 and 2. He said that 2 or 3 times in his discussions with Satan as they're going through all of that. So that's something as well. So we automatically know from chapters 1 and 2 how God looked at Job.
Yeah.
Job wasn't privy to the conversation. And the only conclusion he can come to is that he's done something wrong. But God, don't condemn me. Show me when I have so many of these sufferings, show me what I've done. What have I done to make God my enemy? Why does God continually fight against me? Does it seem good to you, God, that you should oppress, that you should despise the work of your hands? God, it's not like you.
He says none like you.
He's saying, God, it's not like you because you are a righteous God. You punish evildoers. You reward the righteous, but it's not like you to punish the righteous. And that's what he's struggling. It's unbecoming for you. And so again, Job steps beyond the bounds of reason. And, he's, I think in a sense, arguing with God as you would a man, God.
Well, couldn't he just think though, well, why wouldn't he ever think like maybe this is just circumstances?
And again, this is another good point you're making out.
I don't know. He's
struggling.
I'm trying to understand.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
saying.
saying.
He's struggling because some of the things that his friends have been saying may have been said by Job as well.
I mean, I could see where he would, if he's got a relationship with God, he'd be like, God, why didn't you help me?
Right.
You know what I mean? I could see that. But what I'm saying is like maybe it's possible sometimes it may look like, okay, well, God did this. It's just circumstances.
And that's
might be circumstances.
Yeah, that's right. But the more he goes through, the deeper punishment, the more the arguments that his friends and possibly even he had felt comes into play in the fact that what? I'm here because of sins somehow or another. But Job has looked at his life and he knows that he can't come up with nothing. So he's asked God on 2 or 3 occasions, show me what that sin was. And here I think he's emphasizing, he says, does it really seem good to you that you should oppress? Now, again, remind yourself of the fact, going back to chapters 1 and 2, God allowed Satan to do this. So in a way, God could be held accountable, but in another way, he can't, right?
But then again, though, he allowed Adam to eat the fruit in the garden. I mean, he allowed.
That's right.
He allows everyone to make choices.
That's exactly
and
right.
It's quite and you know, sometimes people don't give Satan that probability there that Satan's allowed to make choices.
That's right.
And sometimes maybe those choices don't benefit us very much.
Well,
I mean, what I'm saying though, he's still. I mean, he's in a lot of ways he's got the same amount of freedom that we do.
Right.
Well, why has it been destroyed? Why haven't you been destroyed?
Right.
I mean, that's kind of, you get in that argument, and you can be like, it's got a lot of the same stuff you got going on, we got going on.
Right.
You know what I mean?
We'll think about that in that respect. Who's the one instigating most of the stuff that goes on? It's Satan.
Yeah.
And then think also about the idea, you know, when wars start.
I'm saying as far as God's concerned.
Yeah.
I mean, God's done what he's always done.
Right.
And that's give people choices.
That's exactly right.
And he's given Satan a choice. And Satan's not doing the right thing either. I don't think he's sitting here saying, okay.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't his suggestion to go and torment Job.
Right.
God didn't say, okay, go and do this to Job. Satan said, oh yeah, all right, then. He played the instigator, and then he said, well, if Job is so good, then let's take everything away from him.
Right.
Let's strike him down with all this stuff, and let's see how good he is.
Yeah.
I mean, God already knew it was going to happen before it happened, because he could see the future. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I don't see how he's really responsible for that. It's not God. That's where people get into that, because a lot of people that aren't Christians will make those arguments, and they'll be like, okay, well, why does this happen over here? How come his children have got malaria, they're dying or whatever? I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
People make that argument, but that doesn't. We could say that and be like, there's a lot of variables there. There's a lot of stuff going on.
There's a lot of stuff.
We don't know.
That's right.
We don't know what's going on. It could be Satan.
It could be.
Or it could just be the way things are. Sometimes.
The way things are.
You know?
And that's part of it as well. One of the things that we're going to point out here in just a moment, he asks in essence in verse 3, he says, does it seem good to you, God, that you should oppress, that you should despise the work of your hands? Now, think about that. If you make something with your own hands, you take care of it. You kind of, you know, if you're making a special box for somebody, you're taking care of it. You put the varnish on it. You keep the stain on it. You do all of that other stuff.
That's like why the potters say to the why does the pot say to the
potter, why did you make me this way? You know, so one of the things that you can understand is over and over again, the Bible emphasizes the idea that God is watching over his affairs and taking care of things. You know, he's watching over them. He is the maker of all things, so he's going to care for the things that he makes.
Things just like sometimes he's going to be silent.
Yeah.
And sometimes there might be a lesson in it for you, you know?
And could it not be that this whole book is about the ideal of learning this lesson?
But there's a lot of times that people look at it like, oh, well, if I'm Christian or I'm this, I should have lots of money. God should protect me from everything.
That's right.
And that's not really the case. That's not how it is. You're probably going to be poor if God really loves you. And you're probably going to face some challenges being a Christian.
Right. That's exactly right. So here he goes on and he says what? Do you have the eyes of flesh? Let's see. You smile on the counsel of the wicked. Now, what's Job saying here? Does it seem too good to you that you should oppress? 10:3. You should despise the work of your hands and smile on the counsel of the wicked. So, God, I've tried to do what's right. I'll offer the sacrifices. I did my thing, and I did what I was supposed to do. And notice he says, why are you despising the work of your hands, me, and smiling on the counsel of the wicked? I don't understand that. You know, the only reason for the wicked to prosper, as far as Job was concerned and his friends, the only reason for the wicked should prosper is because God shines on them. In other words, God's blessing them. Okay.
I was thinking about, though, there's one example that we know that happened before that. We don't know if they know that story, but I mean, Cain
and Abel.
I mean, Cain was not killed, or
right.
It doesn't seem that he was struck down with a disease or anything like that either.
True, but I think
mean,
the whole circumstance in those circumstances could very well be because we're at the very beginning of
argument he's making here, though.
Yeah,
is why do you bless the wicked or whatever else? But I mean, they would know that, right? They would most probably know about Cain.
They would probably know about Cain and a lot of these others. There are others in the Bible that seem like they were blessed, even though they were wicked people. But again, the final reckoning is going to make and show the difference.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, obviously. So he goes on. Do you have the eyes of flesh? Do you see like the man sees? Are your days like the days of your immortal man? Your years like the years of a mighty man, that you should seek for my iniquity? Now here he's using something. He's comparing God as it was. God, are you like mortal man? Do you have the same years we've got? In other words, Lord, you know, you're looking around like the days of a mighty man. You're looking specifically for my sin. You're searching out my sin. Although you know that I'm not wicked and there's no one who can deliver from your hand, you know, this is called anthropomorphism. It's a word that means that they're putting, in poetic language, they're putting attributes of man on God, trying to understand God. Now that's what anthropomorphism is. It's, you know, they speak of God in these terms, like, we've got to remember he's higher than a man, right? He's greater than man. But what I think he's trying to say here, God, are your days like the days of a mortal man? No, God's days are endless, right? God, are your years like the years of a mighty man, that you should seek from, that you're spending all your time being concerned about my sin? He says, but you're searching my sin, but you know that I'm not iniquity. I don't have iniquity. So there's no one who can deliver from your hand. So Father, why are you doing this? God does and sees all. He misses nothing. He has no limited sight. He knows past, present, and future. So God's not short-sighted. God's not short-lived. We can live, we grow wiser, hopefully, every day from everything that we've learned. God doesn't grow wiser. Why? He's all wise.
You know what I was thinking, though, too, though, is like with people sinning and stuff like that, and it says, you know, we like to use the word long suffering. I mean, that's our interpretation, but that's patience.
Right.
But long suffering, God is long suffering, right? God is patient. But God is patient with us when we're difficult.
That's right.
And he's like, a lot of times he's standing back and he's like, you know, gives us time to deal with that or whatnot. So it's not just good. Like, it's not just, oh, he's blessing us with good. But sometimes he's taking a step back in general. Like, oh, well, they've done something wrong. Oh, let me see if they're going to do the right thing. You know what I'm saying?
And I think in some situations, there are biblical examples where that is the case, where sometimes God does step back.
And
why did God in the
he's
very
right
beginning?
Here. He's like, oh, well, you're not responding to me. You're not doing this. You're not helping me. Sometimes God does that.
That's right.
He steps back and he's like, hold up.
We'll let you guys do what you're going to do and see where it finally gets you.
Yeah.
Was that not the case with the Garden of Eden and Cain and Abel? Or excuse me, Adam and Eve.
Well,
and then Cain and Abel.
One of the things that threw me off there was that it was like, like it's like when Cain killed Abel. It was like, oh well, he kind of acted like he didn't know. Like, oh, why is his blood crying out from the ground? Like he had just found out.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know
that
what
was when I first read all that stuff. That's what it got me. And with the apple.
Yeah.
Why are you hiding over there? Like he doesn't know what's going on.
Right.
That's kind of confusing.
Right.
For the first time
and he's just like a father to a son. That's
but it's the same thing though.
Yeah.
He let back and he let them make decisions. And I think it's a matter of growth too. A lot of times. It's a matter of growth. That's not the sin necessarily, but I mean like the coming to the table, dealing with the problem, being an adult. That's like us when we're growing up, we're being an adult, right? We got to learn to deal with our problems.
That's exactly right. And that's exactly what's going on here. So he goes on and he says, your days are like the days of a mortal. Are your days like the days of a mortal man? Your years like the days of a mighty man? That you should seek for my iniquity and search for my sin? You know that I'm not wicked, and there's no one who can deliver from your hand. That's what he's saying in verse 7. You know, I know that I'm not totally sinless, but I've not lived a wicked, profligate life where I'm just going out there and doing everything I want to do and killing everybody I want to kill. And, you know, I'm not doing that. So he says, in essence, God, there's no one who can deliver from your hand. You're punishing me. Nobody can deliver from your hand. So how am I going to deal with this? So let's read verses 8 through 12. He comforts himself. Job, is he still struggling with this? Now, putting yourself in Job's place, you see him complaining. You see him struggling with the friend's attitude. You see him struggling to try to get it all worked out in his mind, and he can't. So he again comes back to the idea, you know, verses 8 through 12, God, you're almighty, you're all powerful. So let's see what he says. Your hands have made me and fashioned me in intricate unity, yet you would destroy me. Remember, I pray that you made me like clay. And will you turn me into dust again? Well, yeah, eventually. Did you not pour me out like milk and curdle me like cheese, clothe me with skin and flesh, knit me together with bones and sinews? You granted me life and favor, and your care has preserved my spirit. Lord, you've made everything. You know, Psalms 139, verses 12 through 16. You know, you're the one that makes me, God. All men are created by God.
We're the work of his hands.
That's right. We're the work of his hands. And so he goes on and he says, you made me as clay. Will you bring me into dust again? Just as a potter fashions a pot out of clay. He's using this metaphor, and this metaphor is used over and over and over and over and over again in Scripture, in Isaiah 29, Isaiah 30, Isaiah 45, Isaiah 64, Jeremiah 18, Romans 9.
Is that because of dust?
Yeah, the ideal of dust.
I mean, I know dust is people a lot of times. And then grains of sand, too.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So he goes on and he says, have you poured me out like milk, you know, and curdled me like cheese, you know? You've clothed me with skin and flesh. He says, you've knit me together with bones and sinews. And again, we continue to be amazed that how are our bodies working together all the time. And we don't even think about it, you know, moving our hands, talking, everything like that's going on because God gave that ability. That
more complex.
That's it.
Human beings.
You know, we're naked when we came into this world. In a sense, our organs were clothed with skin and flesh, right?
All that technology they got, they still can't figure out the human body.
And that's right. That's right. So again, he says, this is part of God. You've knit me together. You've granted me life and favor, and you've preserved my spirit. And he goes on and he says, all these things you have hidden in your heart, I know that it is with thee. You know how I'm created, God. You sustain me. You know how I'm sustained. You know all the blessings, the trials. You know everything that's going on in my life. You know, Lord, I'm going to die.
You know the time.
You know the time. You know the way. You know everything. God, You know it all. It's not for us to know it all, but you know it all.
You know what I feel like? I feel like if I was in this moment, I think I would need comfort. I'd be looking for comfort from God.
Mm-hmm. And I think
not necessarily fix my problems, but like,
yeah,
like I don't know, tell me what to do. What do you want?
Yeah.
What should I do here, God?
And that's the thing I think a lot of us want. We want God to speak to us and tell us exactly what to do in every situation.
I don't know about that. I'm just saying, like in general, like,
yeah.
What is it? What is, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And rather than like necessarily look for God to fix it, I think that's what I would do. I would look for comfort somehow.
Yeah.
Or look for, I mean, you obviously, if you're sick like that, you're gonna be like, well, God, could you help me out?
Right.
I mean, if God let you die, he wouldn't be wicked. It wouldn't be his fault.
That's true.
If we get some illness or whatever, just like whatever, if we get coronavirus or whatever we get,
mm-hmm.
I mean, it wouldn't be God's fault that we died from that illness.
That's true.
But I mean,
that's true.
I could see like, hey, you would lean heavily on God. And he's probably thinking he's going to die anyways if this illness is that severe as it appears to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And it was.
So, I mean, I could see where he's at.
So you hear him pleading with God. And I love this. He's honest with God. He's not holding back how he feels. God can handle that. We've seen, and again, appreciate the brother here who's emphasized the idea that sometimes we make a lot of assumptions about God. And this is another reason why I wanted to study the book of Job again, because we see these guys wrestling with these problems. And it hopefully is going to show us how to look and how to always keep our faith. Even in Job's situation, he still keeps his faith, even though he struggles with it.
He wanted us to learn something.
Yeah. And that's why God wrote these things. That's why God allowed this to be written. So again, he says, these things you've hidden in your heart, verse 13, I know that this with you. Now, picking up with verse 14, let's look through verse 17. If I sin, then you mark me. You will not acquit me of my iniquity. If I'm wicked, woe to me. If I am righteous, I cannot lift up my head. I'm full of disgrace. See my misery. If my head is exalted, you hunt me like a fierce lion. You again show yourself awesome against me. You renew your witnesses against me. Increase your indignation toward me. Changes and war are ever with me. So he says, you've hidden these things, but he says, Lord, you've marked me. You've shown all these things to me. You've done this. God, you will not acquit me of my iniquity. In other words, you're not going to declare me not guilty of my sin. You'll mark me. And in a sense, I deserve it. But again, it goes back to the idea the punishment ought to fit the what? The crime. So it's the idea of, should I be suffering this much for something I can't even really remember or point to for a fact as being the reason why I'm going through this?
Do you think you would be, though? I would.
I
mean, do you think you would be? Like, you're still, I mean, he's still talking about the sin. Like, do I have a sin that's causing this? I know. But like, as far as like pinpointing where, unless you're living in sin, right?
Yeah.
If you're living in sin, that's obvious.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, I know
in Job's case,
wrong.
yeah, in Job's case,
I'm lying to somebody, I know, okay, well, I need to stop lying.
Yeah. But in Job's
case. Brother Tidwell?
Yes.
Sorry. I think, though, what Job is I think he's sincerely questioning, because he's saying, if in fact I have sinned, then I deserve this.
Right.
I would deserve this. But he's looking at and saying, well, as far as he's concerned, he has been living faithful. So he's now questioning and asking God sincerely, well, could you explain my suffering then? Because given what the society thinks at the time and what I know, then I'm confused. Help me here. And I think that's what Job is doing.
I think that's what it's doing as well.
Thing to say.
Because again, notice verse 14, 15, and 16 all start off, if I sin, if I am wicked, if my head is exalted with pride. So everything that he's pointing out here is exactly what you're saying. If this is the case with me, then yes, you know, you will not acquit me of my iniquity. But again, he can't think of it. And this is the thing I think also comes into play here a lot, that if I was in Job's shoes, I would be racking my brain trying to come up with whatever it was, or whatever it was were the things that I did to cause me in that situation, so I could definitely make things right as much as I could to get out of the pain and the suffering that I'm in. I imagine the same thing was going on in his heart too.
We tend to we're looking at this book with a mindset that has learned lessons from this book.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
That's the hard thing about it. It's because like we're looking at it like, just like he's saying and you're saying and I'm saying, we're looking at it like, well, you know, this, I don't understand why he's thinking this. But this is the thing though, we've come to these conclusions based on these
books.
And if not even us personally, someone else that we've learned from in the book has come to these conclusions based on this. Some things just happen. You know what I mean?
Right.
And they don't have, you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you're saying.
Learned a lot from his book. So when we're looking at the book, we're not understanding, you know.
That's right.
Does that make sense?
That's right. So, you know, he said, even if I'm righteous, I can't lift up my head. I know that I know that I'm not a perfect man. I know that I have sinned. But I think what he's really complaining about is the extent of his suffering in comparison with what he knows that he's done. We always say the punishment ought to fit the crime, but it seems like in Job's case,
looking over the fence,
it's overkill.
You mean like looking over the fence, like so to speak, like looking at someone else, maybe particularly.
Yeah. And he knows that he's not done anything to deserve as much as he's going through. And that's why he has a problem with his friends, because they've made assumptions.
Yeah. They might have actually sinned, and he knows about that though.
Yeah.
We don't, I mean, that's reading more into it.
Right.
And I'm just saying, we don't know a lot about them either though.
That's right. So one of the things that we pointed out on time and again, he sees his affliction, which to him and his three friends is a sure sign of sinfulness. But he also knows that he's not done any grievous sin. So he's just confused as to why he's having to suffer. Yeah. And he's a man that's hurting. He's trying to find answers, and he gets none. He gets none. And
God
he says
didn't talk to everybody though back then, though, right?
Huh?
I mean, God didn't talk to everybody.
No, he did not. So he says it not only that, but it increases. It's like a fierce lion. You know, my afflictions continually increase, and again, as the fever continues, as the sores continue, as the pain continues, along with the loss of his wife, family, everything. It's just, he said, you hunt me like a lion, God. You're staying on me with no relief, no release. And God, you're just out to get me. And I can't deal with it anymore. I can't deal with it anymore. So then he comes to verses 18 through 22. Why have you brought me out of the womb? I wish I had perished and no eye had seen me. The ideal is what? I wish I'd been born dead. I would not have had to suffer this. I would have been as though I had not been. I would have been carried from the womb to the grave. He says, are not my days few? Leave me alone that I may take a little comfort before I go to the place of which I shall not return. To the land of darkness and the shadow of death, a land as dark as darkness itself, as the shadow of death, where even the light is like darkness. So here in this last thing, you know, what's Job saying in this last little bit? God, just let me die.
What's the shadow of death, though, for real? Like, as far as biblically, the reference to that, what is that? I mean,
the shadow of death sometimes, the shadow of death sometimes suggests the idea that death is not a real thing. That we think that when somebody dies, they're gone and they're gone forever, but that's not the case.
Yeah.
It's the psalmist will use this in Psalms 23. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Death is not the end.
I thought it was like scary.
Yeah.
Or something.
Death is not.
Or something scary.
I think, as I've looked at it times past, that sometimes we do think that death is scary because we don't know the unknown afterwards. But the psalmist says, even though I'm walking through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, because why? You are with me. And I think the same thing's going on here. He's been through this shadow, and he just says, you know what, Lord, all I'm asking is, he says, death itself will put an end to all my suffering. I wish I had died at birth.
Yeah.
I wish that I had, I wish that I have not lived as long as I've lived to go through all the things I've been having to go through. And so he's saying, in essence, Lord, just give me a little while. Just leave me alone for a little while before I go to the land of the shadow of death.
I think it's too much for him to take.
Yeah.
Too much pain.
That's it. I think that's it.
A lot of pain.
That's it. Shadow of death. I'm trying to look through some of my notes here very quickly to emphasize this idea of it. Go to the place that I shall not return. Chapter 7, verse 9, a land of darkness and the shadow of death.
I'm saying it's not hell, because our
No.
Hades,
Right.
it's not that. So it's something on earth, because if David's talking about he's going to walk through the valley of the shadow of death, then that means something here on earth.
Yeah. So he would rather be in this place of death, the shadow of death, as it was, where he said even the light is like darkness.
Oh, I know. It's like you're saying, but it's like the fear of death. Like David's talking about, I won't fear
death because it's nothing more than a shadow.
Yeah, but yeah, so he's saying I'm not going to be afraid of death. He's about to go into battle.
Yeah.
And that's a possibility.
That's a very possibility in Psalms 23.
Yeah.
And here in this case, he's saying, he said, I want to go to that land of darkness, the shadow of death.
That's a very possibility for him too.
Yeah. All right, let's take about a 5-minute break. Let me get another throat lozenge, get everything brought back up. We'll pick up with chapter 11, where we start talking about Zophar.
You take those honey halls; those are good.
Started again. Job 11. Zophar now speaks. Now, Job has done a long speech. I hope you've noticed something. Job speaks usually 2 chapters. His friends speak 1 chapter. Job speaks 2 chapters. So just keep in mind, this is kind of the way the pattern of the book's set up. And this helps you to hopefully see what's going on. And Job had just finished completing a long speech with the same way he had finished the other speeches, wishing for death, wishing that he was out of this world. And now Zophar begins his speech. He's perhaps the most impetuous of the 3. He's going to say things seemingly without thinking them through a little bit more vocal in his accusations against Job and his sins, or his perceived sins, as he's talking to Job. So chapter 11, verses 1 through 6, gives Zophar's accusations against Job, a vindication of God, verses 7 through 12, a plea for repentance, verse 13 through 19, and then the end of the wicked in verse 20. Now, one of the things I want to encourage you to do is you're looking at each one of these speeches by the friends. You'll notice how they kind of all fit the same pattern. The idea of Job, this is what you've done. This is the reason why you're suffering. Number 2, God is right. You can't argue with God about his punishment of what you're doing. Job, you need to repent. And if you don't, then you're going to wind up with the wicked.
These are diverse peoples, huh?
Different people.
Because it says Neamathite.
Yeah. Yeah, so they are different people.
Canaanite. So they're from different places.
From different
Maybe
places,
different races too.
That's right.
Possibly.
And it seems like I said before, from some of the various commentaries that's out there, that they probably started the oldest to the youngest.
Yeah.
And so, being perhaps the youngest, he's going to say things more bluntly. He's going to say things without as much tact. He's also just going to just lay it out there, and because that's something about us, is we're young, we're full of ourselves, and we just pretty well tell everybody what we think. As we grow older,
I'll say that kind of pricks my heart a little bit. Maybe that might be me.
As
I think you describe me a little bit.
As we grow older, we then begin to realize that maybe we will not have we won't turn people off because of the way we say something. If we stop and think about what we're trying to say and get their thoughts, from that viewpoint. So I think there's something to be said about that. In each one of these speeches, as I said, the older, and here is Zophar, as I said, the most impetuous of the ones. He's just going to be more vocal in everything. He's just going to tell it like it is. Okay. And this is going to do nothing but add fuel to the fire as far as Job is concerned. So let's look at some of what he says. Beginning in verse 1 through 6, let's look at his accusation. Zophar the Naamathite answered and said, should not the multitude of words be answered? Should a man full of talk be vindicated? Should your empty talk make men hold their peace? And when you mock, should one rebuke you? For you have said, my doctrine is pure and I'm clean in your eyes. But oh, that God would speak and open his lips against you, and he will show you the secrets of wisdom. For they would double your prudence. Know therefore that God exacts from you less than your iniquity deserves. Boy, he lays it out on the line there, doesn't he? He didn't pull no punches with him. This
sounds like me, though. That's only something I would say.
And he just really
my doctrine is pure.
hits him, buddy. He hits him hard. Okay. There's no tact here. There's no trying to soften his words. He's just going to give it to him. He doesn't care if that's what it is. And I've met people like that. They just kind of like.
No, I think I'm like that.
Well, I'm not going to get into that discussion on your situation, brother. But I have met a lot of folks that it seems like that they just love to tell people off. They know exactly what's going on, and they know what the problem with every other person. And
you mean accusations?
Yeah, making accusations, and that's not it. And so he's the most impetuous. So again, he's trying to vindicate God, speaking where he has no right to speak, judging things the wrong way. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, first he asks the question, should not the multitude of words be answered? He's asking the question, the multitude of words has reference to a foolish man in Ecclesiastes 5:3, a man who engages in folly, who's just putting stuff out there. In Proverbs 10:19, that a multitude of words is sin. So we've got to be careful what we say and how we say it.
How is that? What do you mean by it? Well, say what's the verse again?
Proverbs 10:19. Proverbs 10:19 and Ecclesiastes 5 verse 3.
Many words is sin.
Well, let's look at the passages very quickly instead of me trying to quote it off the top of my head. Listen to what he says in Ecclesiastes 5 verse 3. A dream comes through much activity, and a fool's voice is known by his many words. That's Ecclesiastes chapter 5 at verse 3. Proverbs 10 verse 19. Proverbs 10:19 says, in the multitude of words, sin is not lacking, but he who restrains his lips is wise. So you hear what he's saying there? Usually when you say too many words, you wind up saying things you shouldn't say.
Stupid words. It sounds like saying if you say too many words, you say something dumb.
In the multitude of words, sin is not lacking. So
is that what it's like? Like you were saying, like if you say enough things, then eventually you put your foot in your mouth.
You're going to have sin somewhere or another. But he who restrains his lip is wise. And that's why over and over again throughout the Proverbs, he emphasizes the idea that our speech is very important. So here's this one of these situations. While Zophar is encouraging Job to repent, you know, he takes it upon himself to try to answer Job's foolish words. And he kind of shows himself to be the one that's not really that wise. So he asks a simple question: should a man full of talk be vindicated, be justified? A man that runs off at the mouth usually will get in trouble. His words will get him in trouble. There's a widespread prejudice against good speakers. And some people say that the less you say, the better off you are. So especially as preachers and teachers and so forth, maybe it's not the multitude of words that we need to say as much as we could possibly speak at a shorter period, but maybe say a lot more wiser things for people to think about.
I was going to say, like, that's our job, is to say lots of words.
Well, I mean, yeah, but again, the point is, you know, think about these other, be swift to hear, slow to speak, what? Slow to wrath. James 1:19. James chapter 2 will talk about the trouble our tongue could get us into. So these are all things that's there. And I think as Zophar is trying to address Job, he feels like Job has said too many things. And that as a result of that, he said some things that he shouldn't have said.
I think that's what it means, is like, if you fly off loose lips, what they said, sink ships.
Loose lips, ships, sink ships. That's
you
right.
know, you fly off and eventually you put your foot in your mouth.
That's right.
You say something stupid eventually, and it's something you should have said or something.
That's right. And then also your people will judge you as a result of that. So that's the whole idea he's trying to emphasize. So notice as we go on a little further, verse 3, should your empty talk make men hold their peace? Your empty talk. I think it kind of feels like Job's lying a little bit, because Job has always maintained his innocence. Chapter 9 at verse 20 and verse 35, chapter 10 at verse 7, verse 15. So he feels like he has to answer Job. You have made a bunch of empty talk, and you have tried to justify yourself. And so he says, I'm going to just tell you, no, that's just it. And again, he naturally figures an enormous sin because of the enormity of the trouble. Like Job, like his friends, he thought, well, obviously you've done something horribly, horribly wrong to be in the situation that you're in right now. Eliphaz, Bildad, Zophar have all tried to make Job ashamed. Job, or Zophar, comes down the hardest. You know, as far as he's concerned, Job is lying, that he's obviously done something to be in the situation that he's in. So he kind of dismisses a lot of what Job is saying. He also mistreats Job. And that's the reason why, as we come later to the book, Job was going to actually say, miserable comforters are you all. You're not comforting me. You're hurting me even that much more, accusing me of things that I've not done. So that's it. Now notice verse 4. He says, you have said, my doctrine is pure and I'm clean in your eyes. Now, in all of Job's speech, did he ever say that?
I was going to say, I looked it up, and it's a different word. It's not doctrine really per se. Because doctrine wouldn't really make a lot of sense in this time.
Right.
You know what I mean, though?
Well, the word doctrine, a lot of times in the Bible, is simply teaching. Yeah. Yeah. It's simply teaching. And so a lot of times as you could.
Well, I think of doctrine like something Paul said.
Yeah.
That's doctrine to me.
In scripture, scriptural doctrine, I see what you're saying there. But you could also make the same thing about Paul's teaching, right?
Yeah.
So you, Paul, or you, Job, have said my doctrine is pure. You know, you must have lied because you must have sinned because you're going through all of this.
What you said is teaching. So he's saying,
my teaching is pure.
My teaching is pure. It's like, I got good learning. Yeah. I've learned well.
I've learned well. Yeah.
I guess we could also say my views.
Huh?
Yeah.
My view.
Yeah. My view is pure. Yeah. So he said, you have said my pure view is pure, my teaching, my doctrine, and I'm cleaning your eyes. But he said, oh, I just wish that God would speak. I just wish that God would speak, because then you know that you're not as good as you think you are, Job.
It's like he wants him to get rebuked by God.
That's exactly right.
So it seems like.
And if God actually does rebuke Job, then does that not vindicate the three friends?
It's like the guy who's like excited to see two people in an argument because he wants to see somebody fight.
Yeah, that's kind of what it boils down to. So, but got to remember this: Job has confessed to the fact that I'm a sinner. He says that you should seek my iniquity and search out my sin, although you know that I'm not wicked. There's no one who can deliver from your hand. Think about the idea of sin and wickedness. A lot of times we say that those two terms are synonymous, but one kind of just, wickedness is where you're actually engaging in it over and over and over and over again. And then you have the one sin that a person might commit every once in a while. And I think
no one is perfect.
Yeah, that's right.
I think that what he's trying to say when God is saying that, is he's saying that, look, this is a man who his practices are upright. His practice is, obviously he did not keep the law perfectly from birth.
Right.
If people were going around doing that, we probably wouldn't need Jesus. You know what I mean?
That's
It's
right.
like, you know what I'm saying? It does say that no one has kept the law perfectly from
That's
birth.
right.
So,
and that's why we need it.
He's probably made mistakes. Maybe it was like, you remember the guy who said, Jesus talked to him, he said, I've kept all these from birth.
Right.
And Jesus, looking in his heart, knows that
that
he's kept that from birth. And then he gets right to it. He's like, okay, we'll get rid of your money. You know, the thing is, I think it doesn't mean like, okay, well, this guy's never sinned at all, but it means that he's an upright man in general, and he's a God-fearing man, and he's got good practices or whatnot.
Right. Good points. Good points. And I think what Zophar is trying to say now is, he says, you're saying my doctrine is pure, I'm cleaning your eyes. And he said, you know what I'd like to have? I'd like for God to speak to you. I'd like for God to open his lips against you, and then he will show you what you've done. You know. And again, think about the idea. You know, Job had asked God to do that. Remember that? Chapter 10, verse 2. Show me why you contend with me. Job said that. God, show me why. And now Zophar, in answering this thing, he says, oh, I wish that God would speak, because he would show you, you know.
It's almost like he's got a whole bunch of religions in there. Like, is a Jehovah's Witness friend, and everybody's got like a different opinion on how God's going to respond.
And what's interesting in this is we're going to see it at the very end of the book. When God finally does speak, he takes Job's side.
Yeah.
He takes Job's side. So he says what? He says, God will show you the secrets of wisdom. He would show you this. Again, all treasure and wisdom resides with God, Colossians 2:3. What we know as human beings is just a drop in a bucket somewhere, you know, compared to what God knows. So what we know of God, what we know about God, is nothing compared to what we don't know. So, I think what he's trying to say is, he said, I wish that God would speak. He would show you the secret of wisdom, and they would double your prudence. If God would speak, then you would understand twice as much as what you're understanding now.
Who? Him?
Zophar is saying that to Job. He said, Job, if God would show you the secrets of wisdom, that would double your understanding. And you need at least a double portion, because you're getting it all wrong.
He might just be trying to vindicate himself a little bit, though.
Zophar?
Yeah. He might be jumping in there like, oh, well, these guys had something great to say. Let me.
Possibly.
You know what I'm saying? Like, somebody might be like, oh,
possibly. And again, it's, you know, the thing he's trying to say is, what God exacts from you less than your iniquity deserves. Listen to that assumption. Obviously, Job, you have really blown it, Bubba, because you're in this situation.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there not confessing sin and not admitting to the fact that you've sinned and telling us that we're all wrong, but look at what you've done, look at what you're going through.
Were they supposed to confess it to each other at that time?
I think so. I think that confession was something
like, in other words, if he had sinned, would that be wrong that he was not telling them? Would that be a sin in itself?
I don't know. I can't say about that. I know exactly what you're trying to say.
I mean, I know as Christians, we're supposed to tell each other. We're supposed to. But the church is a mess. People don't. Yeah. People can't handle that because they like to look down on other people. But
and the fact that we put too much faith in people sometimes, and whenever we find out that they're just like us, then that destroys our faith in God.
Yeah.
Because our faith is more in people than it is in God.
Well, I mean, people are literally like gossips and stuff like that.
I know.
Go around
stirring
things up.
I'm very well aware of that. I'm a preacher. Okay, I'm very well aware of that.
I'm just saying, that's one thing. I mean, it seems like if he had sinned, it wouldn't be. I don't know though. If he had done something wrong, though, it really wouldn't be none of their business. So,
if it had been a secret sin.
You know what I'm saying?
If it had been a sin,
but I mean, if he had something between him and God, right, it wouldn't be their business.
That's right.
I mean, I don't see.
Yeah. I think maybe me and you've talked about this before.
What I'm saying, he's saying, call it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, if he had done something to be ashamed of, he'd be ashamed of it.
He should be.
Right? Should be. I mean, I don't think I would call it out and be like, oh, I had an affair with my wife. I would say that right there in front of them. That's not really their business, right?
Well, you would hopefully. I look at it from this viewpoint. This is my opinion.
What I'm saying is accusation legitimate?
If I had sinned against my wife in what you were talking about.
In this time.
Okay.
In this situation.
Well, let's talk about in the situation in the church today as the way it ought to be, and then look at it from this viewpoint, okay? If I was in a congregation of the Lord's people that I knew loved me and thought the best of me and would point or trying to help me to get to heaven, and I stood up and confessed a sin, then I would hope that everybody would understand that I committed a sin just like everybody else probably has, but they just haven't confessed. And that I would get the encouragement and the love and the.
See, I never felt that from people in the church.
I know, and that's a sad situation.
I've seen them put somebody on display.
And,
and I take those verses to mean that we should confess to one another so that we can pray for each other.
That's exactly it.
I don't think it really means, hey, let's go look at. I think that the point is that no matter what wickedness this person is telling you that they've done in their life, you should be able to handle that with a straight face, caring about that person's soul.
And caring about that person's soul to the point to where you will go up to them and say.
It doesn't matter how bad it is.
It doesn't matter how bad it is. You are tempted. You're going to be tempted to do this again. If you have the urge to do this, give me a call. Let me see what I could do to help. Yeah. That's different than pointing a finger at them and just turning our back on them. And I don't think God wants us to do that unless they refuse to repent.
I saw a guy get up in front of the church, and I didn't like the way they acted towards him. Like the guy was.
Brothers,
yes.
Let me say this. I think we need to confess our faults one to another.
Amen.
But I think we also need to be realistic that there are the church will always have people at different knowledge and maturity levels.
Right.
Yeah. And there are some things that the wider congregation cannot handle because of their level of development and maturity. And therefore you would think that the elders certainly would be of such a mindset that they're saying, okay, we will help you, we will, support you, we will, pray with you and encourage you, that sort of thing. But the fact that there are going to be some members in the congregation who might not have a godly attitude towards forgiving others is a reality that we need to accept, and where we need to train and teach the congregation that what true forgiveness is.
Amen.
Because sometimes some people are not able and not mature as they ought to be in terms of dealing with some situations.
That's exactly right.
That was a good answer.
Very, very good answer. And you're exactly right. And again, the whole point, as I look at it, is the idea of getting the whole church to that level of maturity, where we could do that.
Well, I mean, the situation with the guy in Corinthia, that's like he's bragging about it. There's a difference
exactly
there.
Right. That's the whole.
He's
totally
saying this situation. Is a good thing. I'm doing this.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, we don't have a lot of examples where they're talking about that. But like, I mean, obviously, if someone doesn't realize it, that's like, hey, we need to pull that person aside. We need to explain that to them.
Right.
But I mean, I don't think that's what he meant when he said confess. I don't think he meant get up in front of the church and, put yourself on display. I think that he meant confess it to one another as brothers and sisters. I think we don't do enough lifting each other up as it is.
I agree.
I think we're supposed to bear each other's
We should bear
troubles.
one another's burdens out. And I think another thing is, what is a confession? The word comes from a Greek word, means you're saying the same thing as. And the bottom line is that I don't necessarily need to confess a sin. If I sin against you, I don't need to confess it to the whole congregation. I just need to work it out between me and you, and say, look, I've done something wrong. Please forgive me. Please help me to do better. And I think that's the way it needs to be.
Yeah.
But again, just think about and again, I don't mean to get off on this subject too far, but I think it's something that we do need to talk about, is the fact that, I've had brethren get up and say, well, tell the congregation if I've sinned, I'm asking for their forgiveness. And I'm like, wait a minute, if you've sinned, if you don't think you've sinned, what are you doing up here saying if I've sinned? Obviously you've sinned somehow or another. Obviously you've done something for you to want to come forward and say something. But to sit back and say, if I've sinned, is not making a confession of sin. It never has been.
I think of it like too, though, is that we need to look at it more like we're a team. And that if someone, like, we're a team, we're a family, that's one thing that I learned in the military. We have a lot of camaraderie. If someone's suffering, we got to figure it out. We got to do something to deal with that, and nip it in the bud. If someone doesn't have a couple bucks to get something to eat, we'll go and get them something to eat, or whatever. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just saying in general.
I think, you're right that in the fact that
this person's struggling with a sin or whatever it may be.
We need to help them, not crucify them.
The last thing we need to do is be like, wow, I can't believe they did that. And then some people will be tempted to go and spread that around.
That's right.
That happens too.
Yep.
So that's what I mean. Like, it's almost like you put someone in a situation, like what he's saying is true. It's almost like you put them in a situation where you tempt them to do that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't know about the confessing, like, out in front of people, is what I'm saying. Like, I'm debating where this guy is talking about this, and this is a different time period. I'm saying, I don't think that would really be none of their business. But granted, it's like I was saying before, like with my family, if I open myself up and I'm like, hey, I'm not doing well and I need your help, that's why I don't do that. You open yourself up. If you go, like, you're a homeless person or whatever, and you're like, well, I'm not doing well. I need some food or whatever. But then they keep coming back and they keep coming back and keep making the same mistakes. It's like, you kind of open yourself up for criticism there.
That's exactly right.
I mean, you can't be mad at someone if they're saying, well, hey, how can we help you? Can we get you some boots or something so you can go get you, some work?
Right.
I mean, what I mean is like, that's kind of the situation with Job. Is it seems like he's kind of opening himself up for criticism in a way.
He has. Even
whether or not inviting them into his house.
He has.
Or and telling someone. Because when you bend someone's ear, they're going to say something.
That's
even
right.
if they're not the smartest person in the world, they're going
That's true.
to go be like, I don't know, man. You know what I mean, though?
Yeah. And I think, again, what's happening here is, should his friends have given him the benefit of the doubt rather than jumping to the conclusion that he's done something wrong? Obviously, very wrong.
They're trying to solve it.
Yeah, to solve it.
They're trying to solve it.
Yeah.
Like, how can we fix this problem?
How can we fix the problem?
Like, we got to go.
You need to repent. And as Job keeps saying, I have sinned, but I have not done anything to deserve what I'm going through.
Yeah.
And they're saying, you must have, or you wouldn't be going through it.
Yeah, it's that old school mentality.
It's that mentality. And again, if Job, before it's over with, as I said, he's going to call them all miserable comforters.
Yeah.
And just say, in essence, that's the way I've looked at it. There would be times where Job would say, it'd be best if you'd just shut up. I didn't need this on top of everything else. Not only have I suffering, but now you're questioning my character and everything of who I am.
I don't talk to you about stuff. That's one of the reasons I don't talk to you about stuff, because then you, like I said, then you open the door and it's like, now I gotta listen to what you have to say about the subject. And I don't really want to. Not to be rude, but it's true.
Yeah.
It's like if I tell my family members and they're like, oh, well, now they got a reason to chime in and tell me everything I'm doing wrong.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people like that. And I think we're all like that in some ways, because we want to try to, as you said, solve people's problems.
Yeah.
And God doesn't solve all our problems for us.
Yeah.
He's there to be with us. He's there to walk with us through it, but he does not solve our problems.
But like we were saying before, and in this contemporary times, now, if someone is coming to us, to me or you or any of us brothers here, and they're saying that, I mean, we got to be careful not to do what they're doing here and try to condemn them. Maybe we need to try to be an encouragement and just be like, well, can we pray with you?
That's it.
Or
that's it.
Because if you go, you don't want to discourage someone either. Like that's what's happening here, obviously. Right. You're discouraging them. That's not helping the situation.
That's right. That's right. So God, Zophar says, he says, verse 6, God exacts from you less than your iniquity deserves. Well, number one, how does Zophar know that Job is getting less than his iniquity deserves? Who's the one really ought to be doing the judging here? It should be God, not you, Zophar. And for you to make the assumption that Job deserves more than what he's getting, you're going far beyond what you need to. What does Zophar know? Nothing. Really, he doesn't know. He has the audacity to judge Job's judgment or God's judgment. So think about it in that respect. Not only is he judging Job, but he's also judging God. God has given you less than you deserve.
Yeah.
You see, that's where that kind of goes to. So he goes on in verses 7 through 12. Can you search out the deep things of God? Can you find out the limits of the Almighty? They're higher than heaven. What can you do? Deeper than Sheol. Where can you know? Their measure is longer than the earth and broader than the sea. If he passes by in prisons and gathers to judgment, who can hinder him? He knows deceitful men. He sees wickedness also. Will they not then consider it? For an empty-headed man will be wise, and a wild donkey's colt was born a man. He said, if you prepare your hearts. Well, let's stop there in verse 12. Verse 7 through 12, he's trying to defend God. All right?
Who's trying to defend God?
He's trying to defend God, not offend God.
Oh,
okay. Defend God. So he says, he's saying in essence, can you, by your looking and hearing and touching and tasting and so forth, can you really search out the deep things of God? God is greater than you are, Job, and you need to trust in his confidence, in his providence. Can you find out the limits of the Almighty? Does God Almighty have any limits? No, he can't. All we can really know about God is by his revelation to us. That's it. So what does he go on to say? He says, all the things about God are higher than the heaven. What can you do? Nothing. Okay. He says, it's deeper than Sheol. Now, Sheol at that particular time was known as the abode of the dead.
It's Hades.
Hades in the Greek. Okay. It's a lot of times you read this word, it suggests the idea of graveyards, depending on context or something like that. So
it's a place where a rich man went.
Yeah. Yeah. So he says, they're higher than the heavens. What can you do? Deeper than Sheol. What can you know? Their measure is longer than the earth and broader than the sea. God's wisdom is high as the heaven. It, is deeper than the deepest earth. It's broader than the seas. There's no way that Job could know all the wisdom of God. And God, okay, Job, you can't sit in judgment of God. Okay, but didn't they, in essence, didn't my friend a few minutes ago say, you got less than your iniquities deserve?
You can't sit in judgment of God, either, though.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So the only way we can know anything about God is by what he's revealed to us. And this is what the book of Job is about. This is not only about a man and his sin and his friends trying to get him to repent, but it's also a great, great book about God. We're learning a lot about God here. We're seeing God. And a lot of these things that they're saying to Job is true.
Yeah.
When it comes to God. But they take these true facts and make the wrong assumptions. Yeah. And that's where they sin. That's where they mess up.
They're not spiritually mature, just like he was talking about.
That's right. So he goes on. He says, verse 10, if he cuts off, shuts up, or gathers together, who can hinder him? Who's going to stop God's plans and purposes? Nobody. Whatever God's plans are, he's going to carry it out. That's it. If he wants to bless somebody, what? You're not going to stop God from blessing somebody. If God wants to bring someone to judgment, you're going to stop him for that? Nope, you can't do that either, can you? So what does he say? God knows deceitful men. He sees wickedness. Will he not then consider it? An empty-headed man will be wise, and a wild donkey's colt is born a man. So let's listen to what he says. God knows vain men. He doesn't even need to hear them plead their cases. He knows all their wickedness, all their unrighteousness, because he knows all. He's going to judge righteously. He's going to judge in the right way. God is justified in judging those kind of men. He said, these vain men, deceitful men, the empty-headed man, verse 12, the empty-headed man will be wise. So he could take a vain man that think they're wise, that they know all of God's ways. And I think what Zophar is doing here is he's implying that Job is vain,
it's like empty-headed. You're so dumb that you think you're smart.
Yeah, that's kind of what it boils down to. Yeah. And in your wisdom, you become like the foolish beasts. It's like a donkey that's not broken, he's proud, he's self-conceited, and he has all of that. And can you really, as a man, argue with God? Mm-hmm. Good points. Valid points, true points. But notice again what he's trying to emphasize to him here. He says, this is the way it is, and this is the way you're going. And so you're going down this road, Job, and this is not what it needs to be. So,
but though, don't you think sometimes like people are looking at it from their perspective like that, just like he's talking about spiritual maturity. Maybe they're looking at it from their perspective from God, and that's God didn't talk to them. God ain't dealt with them. Mm-hmm. They don't have a relationship. So like Abraham or somebody like this, that he's got a personal relationship with God. Mm-hmm. He's close to God. Mm-hmm. They don't understand that probably. That's not something
that's right.
They can wrap their head around.
They try to wrap their head around whatever it is they're going through, that other person's going through, so that, as you've said before, we always want to solve everybody else's problems, but we can't solve our own.
Well, I mean, it's true. Like you said, the statements is true. But at the same time, like he's talking to God because he knows God. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? He's considered by God, Right. He's got a personal relationship with God. that they probably don't have.
Right.
I mean, you know what I'm saying?
That's right. That's right. So what is the last thing that he tries to do? He tries to again encourage Job to what?
Repent.
There you go. There you go.
I didn't read it. I just guessed.
If you would prepare your heart and stretch out your hands to him, if iniquity were in your hand and you were put it far away and would not let wickedness dwell in your tents, then surely you could lift up your face without spot. You could be steadfast
Just read the sinner's
and
prayer.
not fear. You would forget your misery and remember it as waters that have passed away. Your life would be brighter than noonday. Though you were dark, you would be like the morning. You would be secure because there's hope. You would dig around you and take your rest in safety. You would also lie down. Let's see, where am I? Where did I get to? You would also lie down and no one would make you afraid. Many would court your favor, but the eyes of the wicked will fall, and there shall not escape, and their hope, loss of life.
He's sounding like a Calvinist.
Yeah. So if you'll notice something here, there's the same basic pattern with all of Job's friends.
Yeah.
In their accusation. Number one, they make an accusation of sin. Number two, the next point they'll always go to is God is always just, especially in Job's case.
He's trying to tell him to do an altar. What they call that? Altar call or whatever.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah.
Where they go to the,
yeah.
If you'll come over here, we'll pray over you.
That's right. And then that's the third point. Job, you need to repent. You need to repent. And again, most of the time as they're giving this statements, it's more on a negative note than a positive note.
Well, you know, the thing is, if they're standing there with him, right,
mm-hmm.
and they're looking at him, he's not in sin. I'm just saying, I mean,
yeah,
figuratively speaking, like he's not sinning at the moment that you're looking at him.
That's right.
So he's not living in sin, as far as we know.
Right.
And as far as repentance, I mean, that's like 3-4-fold, but I mean, he's not in sin.
Yeah.
He's not doing a sin. Like I can look at you and tell you're not doing a sin at this moment.
Right.
You know.
And here's the thing that, you know, some, they hope that Job will repent, but they really doubt it. Therefore, they see him as a stubborn man that won't.
It's like
confess.
They mean well.
Yeah.
They mean well, but
yeah. But they don't think that he will repent, especially when they keep hearing Job say, I've not done anything to deserve this.
That's a good point, I guess.
You know, so that's kind of it. So again, look at this whole thing. If you prepare your heart.
I mean, I think that is an aspect of repentance. Though.
It is.
No, because I mean, I'm looking at it like that, like, well, are we living in sin? And that's an unrepentant sin. But at the same time, you've got to confess it that it's a sin too, though, in a way. Mm-hmm. Someone's still holding on to something they might not be doing.
That's exactly right.
That's true.
That's right. So again, he said, you need to prepare your heart, you know, get your heart ready to repent. Think about this idea. We spend probably an hour discussing this. Where does repentance start? It starts in our minds.
In your heart.
Yeah, in our hearts, where the soul is, you know. That's,
well, it says a total turnaround.
Yeah, that's what it is.
It's it's a mental turnaround, spiritual turnaround, and a physical turnaround.
That's right. And whenever it starts with the spiritual, that leads to the mental, which will lead to you not doing and engaging in that sin any longer.
You got to come out of it before you
got to come out of it. That's right.
And then when you come out of it, you got
to
to say that is a sin, and Lord, forgive me.
That's right.
And that's that.
And you can't do it anymore.
And you can't do it anymore.
That's
right. If you can't repent of sin that you're living in while you're doing it.
That's right. So this brings us up the discussion, you know, that's often brought up in the church when it comes to divorce and remarriage and things along that line, is the fact that, you know, if you're in a divorced, if you're not, Matthew 19 emphasizes the idea that if you married someone who's divorced for a reason other than fornication, then they can't be, they can't be remarried.
But that's that's the same thing with every sin.
It is,
because they're doing the same things. They're like, well, I mean, is it a sin? And then the Calvinists are like, doesn't matter because I'm not saved by this. I'm not saved by works. So,
right.
I mean, I'm saying like, yeah, it gets to a certain point, like, but there's a lot of that going on there because people will, and I know coming from a position to where I was living out there, you've got to come to that point where you're like, oh, okay, this is a sin. And that's part of repentance.
Yeah.
You got to come to this point. Like, that's the initial stages where the target is on it. Like, oh,
that's right.
I realize I shouldn't be doing this.
That's right.
If you don't realize you shouldn't be doing it, you're going to continue to try to say, you're going to justify it. That's what people are going to do. They're going to do that when they first come to Jesus or whatever. They're going to be like, oh, well, is it really that bad that I do this or I hang out with these friends or whatever? Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
he's encouraging his heart to repent, all right? And again, there must be the desire within the person to make a change. That's what repentance is. So a guy that repents has to hate the sin, desire something better, and make a commitment to do better. Then he says what? If you prepare your heart, stretch out your hands toward him. Okay, it could be a prayer of mercy. Again, a lot of times the Old Testament brings out the idea of people lifting up their hands in prayer to God.
I was thinking about David. David repented his whole life.
Yeah.
Of those sins.
That's right.
I don't know that we have to necessarily hold on to it like that, but that's a good example.
Well, it would be a good example of the fact that if he repented of those sins for his whole life, at least by doing that, he's not going to go back and make those same mistakes again.
Yeah, well, it's obvious. Yeah, his heart has changed.
That's right. That's exactly right. And that's really why God calls repentance. It's not just saying I'm sorry. It's saying, God, I've sinned. I've done this. I need to repent. I've got to repent. I won't do it again. And there's where the struggle comes in, especially if it's something that you're very
like drugs or alcohol
used to or addicted to. Yeah, in that respect, those things come into prayer, come into it. And that's where you need God's mercy and God's dependence upon God. So what do? You stretch out your hands toward him. Well, some people have suggested the idea that, excuse me, that it's kind of like a child stretching out his hand to its parents to be picked up.
Yeah.
So that's a beautiful, beautiful metaphor, beautiful idea that God, I want you, I want a relationship with you. I want you to hold me. I want you to be there with me. And I'm stretching out my hands to you so that you will accept me back and accept me in the way I need to be.
I mean, I know y'all don't believe in the Holy Spirit, but I think that it's a cohesive effort. It's God and man, both.
Right.
And I don't think that I can do it alone. And I don't think if I was in my sin and I didn't have the Lord, that I could do it.
Right.
I don't think I could do it on my own.
Right.
I don't think I would even know that it was sin.
Right.
Or see it from that direction. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So he goes on and he says, if iniquity were in your hand and you put it far away, you don't let wickedness dwell in your tents. Is this not what repentance is? Iniquity in your hand, you put it far away.
He said, dwell in your tent.
You don't allow the wickedness to dwell in your tent. Then you could lift up your face without spot.
Where's that one? What was that one?
That's found in verse 14, 15. Yeah. He said, you could lift up your face without spot. You could be steadfast and not fear. Okay. You totally forsake sin. You don't let your wickedness dwell in your tabernacles and your places where you're alive. And she says, then you could truly lift up your face without spot. You don't need to worry about God and how he's going to judge you on these situations. And you shall be what? You shall be steadfast. You know,
steadfast is another word for obedience too.
Right.
That's what people don't get from the New Testament.
You could be steadfast, not fear. Again, the more we're frightened, the less fixed we are. Think about that for a minute. The more we're frightened, the less fixed we are. But you see, Job would be able to look at God without fear because he knows that he's repented of the sin and gotten rid of the sin.
That's like that verse that says that there is a, what is it talking about? If you've sinned, fear, there's a sense of fear of judgment coming. I think it's Paul, is like Romans or something. He's talking about.
Yeah. So again, you're not going to be afraid of God as much as you're going to want to run to God.
But I'm saying, though, he's saying that in that sense, he's saying that it's talking about, I remember that pretty well because it's the Calvinist thing. It's talking about the fact that if you depart from
evil,
the faith, or whatnot, I can't remember the exact verse, but he's saying that there's a fear of wrath that abides on you,
right,
if you depart from it. Or maybe that's Peter. I don't know.
I'll have to look that up. I can't remember. I'm sure I'm familiar with the passage.
Fearful,
fearful, looking for a judgment, fiery indignation.
That's so what I'm saying is that's kind of what he's describing there, and that's what we're talking about, fear and then love. Fear, the difference between fear and love, because the fear is like, I fear I need to change something.
Right.
I'm fearing God because judgment is upon me. You know what I mean? Am I right?
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's right. So he then goes on and he emphasizes, he said, it's going to be like, you can lift up your face without spot. You would be steadfast and not fear, because you would forget your misery and remember it as waters that have passed away. You know,
like a river.
Yeah. You can't put your foot in the same river twice, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what he brings out there. If you repent, you'll bask in light that is brighter than at noon. You'll be more secure. You know, babies need to feel secure. We as children of God need to feel secure. We want security as we grow older. As we grow older, we also see less and less security. Okay. Our security is based upon our faith and our hope and knowing that God will take care of us. So he says what? He goes on, your life would be brighter than noonday. Though you were dark, you would be like the morning. You would be secure because there's hope. You would dig around you and take your rest in safety. The ideal is you'll dig down to the bedrock foundation. You've got the house built on that rock and nothing will bother you. You know, you will lie down. No one will make you afraid. You would court your favor. But then he ends up by saying what? The eyes of the wicked will fail and what they need and what they want. So Zophar is saying, in essence, Job, don't be like that. Don't be like that. Change. Come back. Repent.
I just see this guy being like Zophar, being the guy like, are you really the one giving me a speech right now? Like, I just kind of see him being that guy. He's like, really? Like, you're gonna lecture me?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that one guy, he's like, he's not very profound, but he's trying to be profound.
Yeah. I see that exactly going on right here. We'll pick up with chapter 12 next week. All right. I know that I've got I owe you a extra class, and I will be either getting it. I
could just come in early if you want. If you want.
Okay, we could possibly do that.
I mean, I could come in early. We could do an extra couple hours.
All right, but
I don't like to see. The thing is, that's the difference, and I don't know. Like, I heard people saying that they're doing it for credit or whatnot. But see, to me, that's a silly thing to say, because if I'm here to study it, I want to get the most out of it.
Right.
And if we're not breaking it down,
right,
that's pointless to me.
That's right.
And I'm wasting my time, and you're wasting your time.
And I agree with you 100% on that.
So I want to squeeze the sponge and get every drop I can get from it. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And that's what I'm trying to give it to.
Sorry. Don't squeeze Brother Tyndale too hard, though.
Say that again, brother. I'm sorry.
I'm encouraging him not to squeeze you too hard.
Don't squeeze it too hard. There you go. Yeah. But sometimes you can squeeze out some stuff you shouldn't squeeze out, right?
What is that? Oh no, I missed the analogy.